Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Women Serve 2. Today we have a special guest with us. We have Cait Conley with us. She is a Hudson Valley native, Army combat veteran, and national security expert. She served 16 years as an active duty Army officer, deploying 6 times to combat zones overseas and becoming one of the first women to serve on the tactical side of a special operations unit, leading high-stake missions in North Africa, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen to hunt down terrorists. Later, she led counterterrorism policy at the National Security Council and helped secure U.S. elections at the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, running for the New York 17th congressional district. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me, Brittany. And saying hi to everybody dialing in from the beautiful Hudson Valley. It's New York 17th congressional district out here in the lower part of New York State. And super, super excited to talk about service and this country, and really, which is the foundation of everything we're doing, right? It's love for this country and our future.
Yeah, so I know I was looking at your campaign. You're already kicking off. When is the election?
So we may have a Democratic primary in June, and then the person who comes out of that would face off in November of next year to represent the Hudson Valley in our 17th congressional district. So it's fun times, But I mean, that's how we were raised, right? To get up, stand up, fight for what you believe in, and not be afraid to take on really hard fights.
Yes, ma'am. So one thing I also saw was after September 11th, because you're from New York, and September 11th was a huge, impact of the United States, but it definitely hit New York very hard. And after September 11th, you went to West Point. Talk us a little bit about that journey. What motivated you to join, to go active duty, and to be an officer?
Yeah, so I come from a super blue collar family here in the Hudson Valley. My great grandfather and grandfather worked in the brickyards here. My dad is a construction worker. My mom's been with the U.S. Postal Service for 48 years. And so this part of the country, what I love so much about the Hudson Valley is it is a super patriotic part of this country, right? You grew up, these communities raised families to have pride in one another, to take care of one another, and to really be very proud of this country. And so with that, 9/11, I was a junior in high school, and we're only 20 something miles up from New York City. A lot of folks in our communities were New York City firefighters and cops who lived up here and worked down in the city. But a lot of folks who worked in the finance world too in this district. And so September 11th had a very significant effect on the communities around here. We lost a lot of lives. And with that, I think it was a wake up call for our generation of we cannot take the freedoms that we have for granted. It is true that America is this incredible country, and the freedoms that we as Americans experience are unprecedented in so many ways. But that's because of people who have fought to ensure that for generation after generation. And so, I give a lot of credit to Demi Moore, because I watched that movie G.I. Jane, Brittany, more times than I can count. If you have not seen it, I highly recommend it. Awesome, awesome film. I only wish it was about the Army Special Ops and not Navy Special Ops. But, I give her tremendous credit. So, yeah, junior in high school. Still remember watching, the Twin Towers fall and went home that night and just told my mom, you taught me to fight for what is right, to stand up for our community and the people we love. And so for me, that means putting on the uniform. And so ended up applying and attending West Point. It is right up the road here in the Hudson Valley. So wasn't too far, but certainly a whole kind of different life completely. But very, very proud. Spent 4 years there, graduate top my class, and that really kicked off my military career. But Brittany, I have to tell you, when I talk to folks and they seem disheartened about this country and some of the political polarization that's happening, I encourage them to go to West Point, because I'm like, just go and watch. Because what you'll see there are young men and women from all 50 states and territories who come from families that are truly the entirety of the economic spectrum. Some of the nation's poorest families, some of the nation's wealthiest families. And these young men and women are there to do one thing, that is serve their country, serve the United States, uphold the Constitution, right? They're there for each other in this country. And it is such a special feeling, because that transcends politics, right? It's about patriotism. And I think that is the best of America.
I completely agree with you. It's, I know America is the melting pot, but I feel like the military is almost like a true definition of the melting pot. You have economic status, you have different races, different, like everything all come at one. And when you're in the battlefields or you're doing a mission, you come together as brothers and sisters. And even the veteran community after military service it's just so deep. Like if you know another veteran, it's like an instant connection. And it's very true that it's just a different dynamic.
100%. I mean, these are folks, we talk a lot about overseas combat tours, but let's be real, the risks in just training
Mhm.
here, training deaths are a thing that I know I certainly have lost friends to here, not even in combat zones. And so
Mhm.
going back to your point of, I think what's so special about folks in uniform is every single day, everything we do, we are taking on risk, personal risk, in the name of ensuring that America has the most effective and most lethal fighting force in the world. And whether it's here training at home to make sure when we go abroad, we can get the mission done, or whether it's overseas in combat zones, making sure American families are safe. It is this incredible commitment to one another that enables us to get that mission done. And so it is so special. And going back to, look, I think this country, who we are, our defining features, like we're Americans, and it is
Mhm.
putting that first.
I absolutely love that. I remember September 11th like it was yesterday. I was a little bit younger, but my movie that inspired me it was a Disney movie. It was Cadet Kelly with Hilary Duff. And I called my uncle who was in the army and I was like, I'm going to join. And he didn't take me seriously for a little bit. And then right after high school, I joined and I decided to do intel because I wanted to protect my loved ones from another terrorist attack. Now, you also went intel. You actually went up and beyond for special ops. So tell us a little bit, like, what kind of drove you to doing special operations? Was it to take terrorists off the battlefields, or did you just kind of get thrown into it and you're like, no, I like this. This is badass?
So when I was at West Point, it was still during the days where women couldn't branch into the infantry. And I didn't know that. Like, I didn't come from a big military family. I thought I was going to get to branch infantry and like be kicking in doors, right after graduation. And so with that, now I've been throughout my career, especially the first decade plus of it, very much in the push for getting rid of the combat exclusion clauses and allowing women to serve in any one of the branches. Because at the end of the day, America deserves the most effective and lethal fighting force in the world. And if you want the best of the best, then you can't just recruit from 50% of the population, right? And this was back where we were pushing so hard. We're like, yeah, have gender neutral standards. What we're saying is that women can get this job done. That's the whole point. And so when I graduated from West Point, I could not branch infantry, which is what I really wanted to do. And so I ended up branching what we tagged the women's infantry back in the day. It was the military police corps. And so when we weren't deployed, we weren't training, we were actually running domestic law enforcement missions here in the United States, right, at military bases and surrounding communities. And so I have from that such an incredible appreciation, not just for the military service, but truly for our local law enforcement and first responders and local police officers and the emergency services. And so I'm very grateful for that life experience, right? But no, I was overseas on my first tour to Baghdad when I first learned about the special ops world and some opportunities. And so that's where, I got to have this opportunity to join as one of the first females on the tactical side of the special operations world and loved every minute of it, right? In this role, what I think is so special is you have some of the most talented people in the country who could be doing so many other things, but they choose to not only wear the uniform, but take on the world's most dangerous military missions because they want to make a difference. And that is where, yeah, we went after terror groups like Al Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula and Yemen, which was planning external operations attacks against the United States. Things like the underwear bomber of 2009, right? Anwar al-Awlaki and the radicalization we saw through Inspire magazine. Those things were very real and resulted in the deaths of Americans here and abroad. And so going after groups like that, stopping the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, working with partner forces on the ground, same thing in North Africa, going after the terror groups that were looking to put American lives at risk. And so it's really this desire to just, look, we will go wherever the nation needs us to go, because that is where the threat is posed to undermining the safety and security of American families. But the special ops world, it is such a special group of people who are so talented, could be easily out there making a ton of money and doing all these things, But instead, they're like, no, my purpose, what fuels me is making sure we are leaving a lasting impact on the safety and security of America.
So, as being one of the first women, how did you kind of spearhead that whole mission essentially? Because you had to make sure that they respected you as a woman, I'm assuming, and then kind of allowing to pave the way for future women to come into the unit.
I think so much of what mattered then and now is you just wanted to be the best athlete for the job, right? It was all about competency. Could you do the job you were being asked to do? And that was a really, really hard job. And not everyone could, but can you? And so it was almost where the way I always approached it was, look, I am a soldier, a leader, an officer, an operator first. And the fact that I'm a woman, like I just happen to be a woman, right? And really just focusing on, at the end of the day, it's the mission. It's our ability to meet mission and deliver. And we cannot fall short there. And that is just the mentality that I tried to, always live by myself and lead by. And when you do that, I mean, again, it just goes back to like people get it done, and having these incredibly talented and incredibly intelligent folks, a lot of the guys I served with, they're the brothers I choose, the family I choose to this day. And so with that, you really find this incredible group of folks. And most of the time, if I ever face adversity, it was usually the super insecure dudes. Let's be real. It was the ones who probably couldn't hack it and were like, oh man, any threat to me not being there, right, is it prompted outrage and insecurity. That was the issue. But the guys who got it done, the ones who were the professionals who were confident and super capable, their focus was on leading and getting the mission done. And that's all that matters,
So during your military career and experience, like, can you share like a pivotal moment that kind of shaped who you are today?
So, so much of my life was spent on the very tactical side, going out there and saying, okay, here is a group that is posing a threat to the lives of Americans, right? How do we degrade or minimize that group and take their ability to capture or kill Americans off of the space, right? Off the field. And so I think the time I really started to appreciate the strategic importance of these fights was when we took on the campaign to defeat the Islamic State or ISIS back in the day. And that was where you saw this terror group that had its talons into communities all across Syria and Iraq. I mean, the landmass they controlled is hard to fathom. And the atrocities that they committed still to this day make me nauseous, right? The brutality of this group, the savagery of this group, the lives that they took across Syria and Iraq, the terror attacks they inspired globally. And so in that instance, it wasn't just about our capabilities as America or the special operations community. We could not fight and win this war against ISIS without the support of local groups and international partners. And with that, once we got to the part of handing ISIS its tactical defeat, right, actually making sure there was no caliphate and we were able to dismantle the operational cells and networks, then partnering with humanitarian organizations and aid organizations to get these types of goods and support back into these communities to prevent any type of recruitment or further radicalization by the remnants of the group that existed. And so for me, I think the fight against the Islamic State was the first time I really opened my eyes to the strategic importance of all of these levers of national power to truly fighting and winning for our national security interests. And so that was everything from building partners with the Syrian opposition, with rebuilding partnerships with the Iraqi military and special operations community, right? Working with partner groups, building partner groups that weren't necessarily official military organizations, but helping these communities establish them to fight back against the Islamic State, especially in the early days. And then the importance of working with partners and allies to make that happen, right? Because again, this type of enduring conflict, you can't solve alone. This is where bringing together collective capability and intelligence, really matters at getting after these threats and getting rid of these groups.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't understand the whole picture of it, right? They only see bits and pieces of what the news says, and the news doesn't have the whole situation. I just remember even when I was in Intel, like we would get protesters at Creech Air Force Base calling us baby killers and all this other stuff. And I was like, we would never, if there was children in the area, we would never strike. I guess I should say never, but like the chances of it was like 0.00001. And it would just bother me that they had this huge misconception and almost not even give the credit to all of these amazing men and women who are trying to make sure that doesn't come onto our American soil.
I mean, Brittany, any type of war is just hard and terrible,
Hmm.
right? And anyone who's been there, the last thing you want to do is send America's sons and daughters out there to do it.
Yeah.
But to keep America safe, we can't be afraid to use military force in ways to make sure these threats don't reach our soil. And we have to acknowledge that, look, since 9/11, we've gotten really, really good at the counterterrorism fight. And sometimes I think that gives this false sense of safety and complacency, right, to
Mhm.
American society, where it's like, look, there's no problems out there. We haven't seen anything like this in so long. And what I remind folks is that it's not because there aren't terror groups out there trying to take American lives every day. There
Mhm.
are. These groups aren't gone. We've just degraded their ability to be effective. And we, as the American security force, right, the national security apparatus, has just gotten so much more effective at defeating these types of threats. But they are there. And the reason why Americans are safe and we haven't seen these things manifest and be successful is because of the incredible work of
Mhm.
young men and women in uniform and in the intelligence community and our partners around the world who work together to make sure these groups are not successful, like we saw on 9/11. But we can't fall victim to our own success where we think these threats are gone, because they're not. And if anything, these terror groups, as technology evolves, their capabilities evolve
Mhm.
and they become even more effective and dangerous. And so we really cannot afford to ever take our eye off the ball, and we cannot afford to be complacent. These threats are not gone. We've just
Mhm.
gotten better at mitigating them. And to your point, when I talk about my time in uniform as an active duty Army officer, like, that was the privilege of a lifetime, leading
Mhm.
America's sons and daughters in defense of this nation that we love. I'm
Mhm.
putting it all on the line. And we do that out of love. And the amount of honor and respect we have wearing the American flag and uniform, to your point, it's because as a military, the law of war is the most important thing. When you
Mhm.
go out there and you conduct these activities, minimizing impacts to innocent lives and civilians was always, always at the forefront. And
Mhm.
that's why, again, I think so much of what matters for a nation is how you conduct yourself in conflict, defining who you are. And that's why the American people should be incredibly proud of our military. No, war is not perfect. It is terrible, but like, it is sometimes necessary. And the way we as Americans, as America's military, conduct ourselves should give the American people tremendous pride, because we have literally seen Americans lose their lives to go out of the way to defend our partners, to defend the lives of innocent civilians overseas. And I think that's a really important part to your point that the American people remember.
Spoken like a true politician. No, I agree with you. We need to have that pride because all of these our brothers and sisters, they sign up and they take that risk and they sign that blank check payable to the United States up to their life.
Look, that's the thing though. I'm not a politician. Like, you want to talk about why I'm doing this next phase? It's because this country that I've spent my entire life fighting for and defending, I feel like politicians are leading it off a cliff right now, and they're destroying what we fought to defend. And
Mhm.
I'm just so sick of it on both sides that it's like, you want to honor the sacrifices of the men and women who've put it all out there. I've lost more friends than I can count
Yeah.
in this fight. Us ensuring the country they lost their lives defending is successful, and that the American people are successful, and that our best days are still ahead of us. Like, that's a responsibility I think we have. So no, I never wanted to be a politician. I'm still not one yet. Fighting hard to get elected. But it's because I feel like we have too many politicians in elected political office and not enough public servants in elected
Mm.
political office who are putting people first and country before party and politics.
I love that it's putting it into like a public servant instead of a politician. And I agree with
Well,
every statement that you just said. And I do want to dive into why you decided to want to be a public servant. But before we do that, because I know a lot of people right now are struggling with wanting to join the military or wanting to stay in the military, especially as a, only for the sake of this podcast, as a woman, how can we encourage and empower the women to take on those leadership roles in the military and to make that difference? Because I know the Women's Initiative team, it was the Air Force Initiative, and I think there was one with the Army too, but that got wiped away. And so it's not as equal playing field anymore, it feels like, is what I'm hearing from a lot of women. So how can we encourage them and empower them to kind of take on those leadership roles?
yeah. So the part that just pisses me off about this, right, is having the most effective American military and the most lethal fighting force should never be political, right? Like that is just about defending this country and setting the conditions to make sure we have the best military. Again, that's just common sense. So what's so infuriating is I'm like, this is literally making America less safe and is counter to common sense. You want every soldier to be able to perform to the best of their abilities and duties to deliver on this no-fail mission of keeping America safe and secure. Full stop. And so what pisses me off about what's going on is we are making American service members political pawns. And that should never happen. That's utter bullshit. So focusing on, are we giving our brave men and women in uniform the tools to be as effective as possible at defending America? That's what this is about. And so when you look at the things that are happening, what I'd say to men and women who are looking to join is like, look, don't allow the politics and the noise above this to influence your decision to serve. Find the signal through the noise, and that signal is service. Because as someone who has served under administrations of both parties, I've served under Republican presidents, Democratic presidents, my mission never changed, right? Upholding the Constitution, defending America and the American people. That never changed. And it hasn't changed today. But I think what's really important is for women to not get discouraged, right? Like, I don't know what kind of male insecurity some folks need to go deal with. And I recommend they talk to a therapist instead of the American people to hash their shit out, because it's just getting in the way of American national security. So little egos and little things, like, go talk to somebody about it. But let's talk about the real things, which is how do we make sure everyone wearing that uniform can meet their mission and deliver? And that is where I hope women are never discouraged from putting on the uniform and doing that. And look, if we go back over literally the past 2 centuries of service and what that looks like, the role of women has always evolved, right? And we've faced, just like this country, we have faced periods of time that are darker and harder. And that doesn't mean you quit. It doesn't mean you throw in the towel and you say, it means you dig in even more and say, I am doing this for the right reasons. And so, yeah, to any woman out there who feels the desire to serve, answer the call. And be proud, because I'll tell you, you're part of a tribe of women, right, who selected to do this. And that is something so special. And so do it with pride. Don't allow the noise to distract you from your mission, which is service to this country. And I promise you, you will have men and women who have your back. Because to your point earlier, Brittinie, when you get out there, the bullshit goes away. The only thing that matters is the men and women to your left and right and getting the job done. Because when you have the highest of stakes, when lives are on the line, the rest of it goes away. It is just about getting the job done. And soldiers know that.
It would have been amazing to have you as a leader. I just feel like you would just get all of your troops ready and just to take on this mission. So what leadership lessons from your experience do you find applicable to other aspects of your life?
I think leading by example, right? Kind of going back to, you never ask people to take on or do things you wouldn't do yourself. And by actually going out there and leading by example, being the person, being the soldier that you're asking your soldiers to be, I think it's the same here, where our communities are dealing with real hardship right now. It's funny, but I was raised by a single mom who raised 3 girls working for the Postal Service, right? I got to live the American dream. Neither of my parents graduated from college. I grew up trying to find like 50 cents literally in the couch cushions so my mom could buy a coffee at the deli on the way to work. Because of public education systems here in New York, graduate of public schools, I got to go off and earn degrees from Harvard, MIT, West Point. I got to serve 16 years, do several combat tours, work at the White House, serve as a senior exec in the Department of Homeland Security, and I just turned 40, right? Like, I have lived the American dream. I'm just getting going. But there are so many families today here in the Hudson Valley that feel like that dream is impossible for their kids. 35 years ago, when my mom, was buying a house and raising me and my sisters here in the Hudson Valley, we were in the lower middle class, working class, but we felt like we were doing pretty good. I wouldn't say thriving, but like we weren't just surviving. And today, that's what families feel like. They feel like it is just too hard to even pay the bills, whether it's a double-digit rate increase to our energy bills here in the Hudson Valley, whether it's insane inflationary effects on groceries, whether it's a housing crisis, and now we see tariffs from Canadian lumber and other goods literally driving up the price of new home construction here in 2027 by $14,000 for the same exact stuff, but just because of tariffs, it's going up 14,000 at a time where we don't have enough housing for the workforce as it is. And so you see all of these pressures, right? Like I'm talking to families on fixed incomes that are literally making trade-offs between groceries and prescriptions. And you're just like, how is this America right now? Like this is not us succeeding. For the first time in modern American history, the economic prospects of young Americans are worse than their parents or grandparents. That is us failing. And we just can't have this be acceptable anymore, And so I think going back to your question of what leadership examples or components do I see most transferred here? I think it's the same thing, Brittinie. It's doing things for the right reasons, focusing on delivering results, not forming more committees and talking about things, but like no shit delivering for people and having that be your North Star, right? You're not doing this for yourself. You're doing this for love of country and for service. And I think part of what has broken our government and the American people's faith in it is that we have too many people in elected office who are just out for themselves instead of out for the people they should be serving. And never forgetting that public service is about serving the public. Same thing as leading. It's about leading your people.
What was like your aha moment on that you wanted to essentially become a public servant or essentially run for your district and be like, I want changes. We need to make changes. Like, what was your aha moment?
So it was the end of last year, post the election, where we really saw this country, I think, at a level of political polarization that we haven't seen in our lifetimes, and you see families being torn apart, right? And you see people not identifying as an American first, but as this party or that party. And it's just like, what was happening in terms of tearing communities apart? I was just like, well, we can't let this happen. We are literally losing our country and the fabric that unites us. And we've got to fix that. And what really pissed me off was my member of Congress who, when I tell people the reason I'm running against Mike Lawler, it's not because he's a Republican. It's because he's a shitty human. It's because he is not serving the people. He is not putting our interests first. He is putting his own political ambitions first. And so he just sat there and he caved to every single demand that was asked of him. He offered up cuts and sacrifices that impacted our communities in ways where you're going to have tens of thousands of folks no longer getting Medicaid. You're going to have, right now, you have communities and our food banks suffering because of the aid that's been cut. We have an energy crisis going on, right? And we just saw this administration claw back federal grant money to the state of New York, punishing us because we didn't fall in line with the administration, right? Literally stopping energy investment programs that were going to help lower the costs of electricity for families here in the Hudson Valley. This is wrong. You know what I mean? Like, this is fundamentally wrong. And this guy who is sitting here representing my family doesn't care about them. The only thing he cares about is his next political office and whatever it takes to get that nod. And so going back to where we come from, when you're a leader and you failed to advocate for your people and deliver, when you failed to meet mission, which is advocating and delivering for your people, you get fired. And so again, like, I'm doing this because we deserve better. The Hudson Valley deserves better. America deserves better.
Do you see potentially going a little bit farther than just your district, or are we just taking one step at a time? Like, what are your aspirations?
I mean, right now it is to deliver for the families in the Hudson Valley that are just getting crushed right now. It is, Brittinie, I have to say, one of the hardest things about this has been you and I are used to worlds where when we see a problem, we get to solve them, right? When someone comes to us and says, I have this problem, we're able to find ways to deliver solutions and fix that near term. What sucks so much is I hear the struggles of families every day here, and there's like nothing I can do about it between now and next November. And that sucks. But in terms of what we're focused on, we talked about how the generations to come have worse economic prospects than we did, or our parents did, or our grandparents did. We have to fundamentally fix that. And we're about to see significant disruptions to the existing workforce, with AI. And look, I'm a tech optimist. I think AI is going to help us solve a lot of really hard problems like curing cancer and figuring out how do we reverse the impacts of climate change, which, by the way, is no longer a moral scientific discussion. Like, it's a straight up national security issue. You have Americans dying because of extreme weather. You have communities getting displaced. You have critical infrastructure getting destroyed. Like, that is straight up a national security issue. And if we don't focus on it like that, we're going to keep failing people. And so when you talk about the things we've got to be doing, I mean, here in the Hudson Valley, we've got to invest in educational programs like the trades to expand the opportunities for people to pursue careers where they can afford to live here, you know? Because right now, I mean, you've got folks who can't afford to raise their family in the communities they grew up in. That's pretty screwed up. So when you look at what is the economy going to look like in years to come, expanding investment in things. In New York, we've got something called BOCES, which is essentially like vocational training programs. Things like the electrical trades, HVAC technicians, expanding that to include things like robotic repair technicians and solar panel installation and maintenance. We've got to be focusing and growing these fields that there's tremendous honor in, but also tremendous need for. That's only going to continue to grow.
I know a lot of people don't want to say run for office, but how can someone help make an impact in the community?
I mean, that's where there's so many ways. It's been incredible. And I'll tell you, I've met so many incredible partners here in the Hudson Valley. I'll give one a shout out. You know, there's an organization called 914 Cares, which is the area code for this part of the Hudson. That was co-founded by a friend of mine, Jessica Reinman. And, you know, she was someone who I got to meet along this journey. She too was initially contemplating running for office. And so she and I became really good friends. And on that journey, she's like, Cait, I think you are our best path to fix what's going on. And so she withdrew from the race and endorsed me and wanted to focus back on her program and organization called 914 Cares. That was helping bring, I mean, basic supplies to families in need here, right? We're talking about school clothing and jackets and school supplies to families that can't afford it. You know, it's stuff like that. About bringing, you know, feminine hygiene products to families where, again, families can't afford it for their girls. And it's stuff that we take for granted. But there are so many ways that you can get involved with your local community to help families in need. And also just, I think, help communities heal. What I encourage folks to do is, look, I think technology is good and bad. You know, I think social media has allowed us to become so polarized and we stop connecting as humans that I think the way we undo so much of it and bring our country back together is by being with each other. Because it's really hard to hate someone when you're standing next to them, right? It's a lot easier behind a screen. And so I certainly encourage folks to find out what's going on in their communities, what programs and projects are out there, lean in to try to help folks in the community. And then really just remember that, look, we're Americans first. And so we're neighbors first. And so just going out there and trying to engage with folks and remind people that, you know, it is patriotism before politics. It is country before party.
What have you noticed so far in your journey has been the hardest or biggest obstacle when trying to make a difference in your community or run for your seat?
I mean, the inability to make this election happen any sooner. It would be great if I could just move up the timeline. So I think that's part of it. Also, I think it's been very frustrating to see how much the welfare of communities has become used as a political pawn. You know, there are some things that just should never be political. The safety, health, welfare, and future success of communities, that's not a one-party goal or other. Like, that is the goal of every American institution, family, and person. And so I think that has been really irritating because it's like, look, these things we all share interest in. So we should be prioritizing them and working together to achieve and implement them. So that's been super infuriating. And I think it goes back to how we started this, Brittinie, which is we just need to get more public servants in office who want to be the workhorses to do the things that need to get done to deliver results. And that just starts with, look, the politicians who got us into this mess aren't going to get us out of it. And I do believe our generation's coming up and we're just like, look, we've got it from here. You know, we're ready. We're going to do things differently. And we're ready.
And it sounds like you already have like a great team behind you. You're a native in the area. So I could only imagine the amazing support you're already getting.
It's been a lot of fun because, you know, in the military, you're all over the world. So it's been really nice to be home and to spend quality time with my family. You know, my dad comes over and mows the lawn. And I'm just like, It's stuff like that, though, he'll be over after this. It's stuff where having my family engaged in this too, because again, my family is politically mixed, right? I've
Mm,
got folks who voted for Trump, who voted for Harris, right? And to show them that, look, it's still me. I'm doing this because I believe in this country. And to be able to bring those types of people together and just say, let's put our communities and country first. And so that's been a lot of fun. When I started this, I knew it was the right thing to do. Just like I knew after 9/11, putting on the uniform was the right thing to do. It was like, no, this is what your country needs of you in this moment. And so, yeah, like, as a kid who grew up pretty poor in the Hudson Valley and like has been in public service my whole life, I can't write myself a 6 or 7 figure check. But despite that, we've raised over $1.5 million in like 7 months.
that's
We are
amazing.
kicking ass. We're getting endorsements from all across the district from elected leaders. We've just been able to build this momentum. And I think part of it, Brittinie, is also because our stories are different,
Mhm.
and they're not the traditional kind of politician story. Like, I'm not a politician. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We've been able to engage and connect with people in different ways.
Mhm.
Service transcends partisanship. So as a vet, I can walk into areas of this district, and West Point's right across the river, right? It's like people are like, oh, they see me first as a patriot and public servant, and everything else after. And so really just trying to show people the humanity again, the patriotism again, the selfless service again, and the ability to use that to connect with people. I mean, you should see some of their minds blown when they're like, wait, you're running as a Democrat? And I'm like, yes, yes. Like, I'm running as an American and a Democrat, yes. But I think some of it's just, showing people that no party has a monopoly on the flag, that
Mhm.
this is about both sides looking at what's in the best interest of America and the big red, white, and blue. And that's what we're all here to do. And just showing them that change is coming, because I think that's what so many people want. They're just sick of it.
Yeah, I feel that too. And you're right that it's so polarized right now, right? Like it's either you're a Republican or you're a Democrat. There's like no in between. And there's so much hatred. And you're right, we need to get back to human decency, human respect, human connection. Because you are running as a Democrat, how are you trying to get all voters?
Yeah. I mean, it's meeting them where they are. It's having the humility to say, I know why you're frustrated with the Democratic Party, right? If they're not Democrats, and saying, I'm doing this because I'm frustrated too, right? And the same thing on the Republican side, where it's like, look, for folks who voted for Trump, like, I get it. It's a lot of them are just frustrated with the system. And my whole thing is, I'm like, look, your life hasn't been made any better. You deserve better. And really just focusing on that, it's like, look, guys, I don't care how you register to vote. When I put on the uniform, when I deployed overseas, when I fought for this country, I never cared how someone registered to vote or voted. The only thing that matters is they were an American. And it's the same thing now. I'm doing this so I can fight for every single person in my district. I don't care
Mhm.
how they vote. I don't even care if they vote for me. I want to fight for them in their future. And
Mhm.
so just reminding them that at the end of the day, there's still people like us out there who want to continue fighting for this country we love. And we're not talk, we've done it. So many
Mhm.
people give it lip service, and it's like, you wouldn't know service like if it snagged you in the head. It's like, come on. And meanwhile, it's like, look, we've done this our whole
Yeah.
lives. And
Yeah.
really just focusing on continuing to set that example and showing them that this isn't about party, it's about country.
And I wish more people would see it like that. And I hope that you can continue to inspire people to see it like that because it's just getting more and more polarized. And we just got to go back to human decency. And like you said before, America first.
Yeah. And it's like, it's funny because I really do think society is the bell curve where the loudest voices are on the extremes, but the majority of us, we're not that different.
Mhm.
Like that middle, we're not that different.
Mhm.
It's just people who are worrying about how to put food on the table, keep a roof over their family's head, right? Buy healthcare that doesn't bankrupt the family, be able
Mhm.
to afford that, be able to give their kids a pathway to success, and maybe take their family on a vacation once a year. You know what I mean? Like there's just basic things that folks want to be able to do. And I think most people are good people. When we talk about fighting for America, fighting so that every American, regardless of your race, color, religion, sexual orientation, generally, regardless of all of that, we fight so every single American can have the same freedoms, the
Mhm.
same liberties, equality for every American, period. and reminding people that that's what America is, you know?
Preach, girl. Preach.
Yeah. Get it.
How can people find you and connect with you and essentially watch your journey for this upcoming election?
Yeah. So please check us out at caitconley.com. That's CAITCONLEY. And then we're on all of the different socials. So please check out our journey and follow us. And yeah, it's been awesome because I tell you, Brittinie, one of the fun things is because I'm not a traditional politician and like we're not coming up from some political ranks. I've been able to get coverage and exposure in a way that others don't. Like I was
Mhm.
in men's health, you know what I mean? Because of our
Interesting.
check out the workout video, right? Like that. And I have a social media series we ran this summer called Reps and Real Talk, where it was like in between sets of like a morning workout. And I would just unpack a policy issue, not
Mhm.
political slamming, but just like, let's talk about what the SALT tax deduction really is. Let's
Mhm.
talk about the impact of the Supreme Court case on women's access to healthcare,
Mhm.
and just talking. And so, yeah, we've been able to get some fun coverage. But please check us out at caitconley.com. This campaign, we are crushing it because there are thousands of people across this country who care about the future of it. This is a
Mhm.
very strategically important seat. It was one of only 3 last year that split the ticket, voting for Kamala Harris and a Republican
Mhm.
member of Congress. And so it is going to be one of the most contested seats next year. But really, I am able to do this, not because as someone who's not a millionaire, not a politician, because of the support that just folks have thrown in because they believe in what we represent and why we're
Mhm.
doing this.
And you're such a down to earth person too, which makes it more relatable. And that's amazing too, because you could relate.
Yeah, real people.
Yeah. It's such a crazy concept, right?
I know.
Well, okay, it's been a pleasure having you on the show, and I can't wait to watch you succeed in this upcoming election. As we wrap up, what is one piece of advice that you wish people would take home with?
Never forget why you're doing something, right? Like the hardest things you will take on in life are going to have really difficult periods. It's not going to be easy, and that's okay. It's hard because it matters that much. And so, really, just remember to stay true to what you were doing. What I would leave them with this is something I used to tell my soldiers, and I think it's more applicable to this time frame. Okay. Doing the right thing when it's easy, that is just doing your job. Doing the right thing when it is hard, when it's going to come with sacrifice and maybe even potential harm. Like that is courage. And this nation was built and defined by people who, in the darkest and hardest of times, lived with courage. That is America. So, certainly encourage everyone to step up and remind ourselves that this country is about courage and doing the hard things.